Welcome back to your Pig Trail Show. Will Monclair alongside Kevin McPherson for your Hog Hoops Report. Kevin, another interesting week of Arkansas basketball. A good game with Georgia, and then a very interesting game with Alabama. Where do you want to start? You want to start with that Georgia game, or do you want to jump in with that Bama matchup?
Well, the Hogs went 1-1. We can start with either one of them. I know the one that's fresh on my mind is the one that played out yesterday. So,
Yep.
now if we start there, Arkansas, there are no moral victories. Will, I mean, at this point in the season, Arkansas is just not a good road team. They did have back-to-back road wins a few weeks ago. Then they come home and lose, stumbling on the road at A&M. They blow, a double-digit lead at A&M, lose that game. And it's kind of the same playbook. Outstanding first half. Arkansas defensively, offensively, builds an 11-point lead at the number 2 ranked team in the country that's just blowing teams out at home, unbeaten at home. And it's not just about halftime adjustments. For whatever reason, these Razorbacks in second halves, they go through a long stretch, at least one run, where it seems like the roof completely caves in, not in 1 or 2 areas, but 4 or 5 areas, whether it's going 1 of 8 at the free throw line for a stretch, which happened against Bama, missing layups, not securing the ball, loose balls or rebounds that come right into your, mittens, and the ball springs out. Now Alabama's converting. And I thought defensively, Arkansas had way too many busted assignments in that stretch. 15-0 run flipped a 5-point Arkansas lead after they led, like I mentioned, by 11 in the first half, 9 at halftime. It was down to 5, but that 15-0 run flipped Bama from down 5 to up 10, and now you're on the you're on the road. This is a place this team hasn't been beaten, and the climb is that much tougher. I do give Arkansas credit for clawing back in and giving itself a chance at the end, but at some point, really good teams don't have this kind of stuff recurring as a theme in so many games this late in the year. In fact, Arkansas teams the past 2 years got things corrected in mid-January after slow starts in SEC play, and we just didn't see this kind of a roller coaster this late in the year, especially in terms of going long periods of time and looking disconnected. I've spent a lot of time talking about that. There were some positives in this game. Arkansas won the turnover battle. They typically are not very good there. +6 in that department, +5 in points off turnovers. Arkansas was +5 in fast break scoring. The Razorbacks were 5 of 10 from 3. That's beautiful because you kept the attempts down. It's not your team strength, and you made 50% of those. Bama, we know, loves to put the 3 ball up. 3 of 22, the Hogs held this team, to a minuscule percentage, but they didn't defend, the paint and get into the rim. That was where Arkansas really had a lot of breakdowns. And with a team as good as Alabama, you're not gonna shut them out of everything, but you got to do better than Arkansas did in that second half when Bama shot 55% after the Hogs, held them down in the 30 to 33% in the first half. That's too much of a glaring difference. And it explains why Bama scores 28 first half points, 58 in the second half. Arkansas was near perfect, not perfect, but in the midweek game against Georgia at home, it's a huge difference night and day between the level of competition. And Arkansas took the Bulldogs behind the woodshed. It was their second consecutive win after blowing out Florida at home. But we saw, individually, we saw Nick Smith Jr. score 50 points combined in these games, average 25 points. 6 big rebounds against Bama in a game that Arkansas hung in there in the first 20 minutes, tied on the boards, finished -11. But Nick Smith was a big part of that. 24 points yesterday, career high 26 against Georgia. Very efficient shooting, nearly 49% field goals, well over 60% from 3, 7-11 combined in those games. So you might see maybe an uptick in Arkansas trying to get him, run some plays for him to get some looks from 3. But also at the free throw line, 78%. So Nick Smith Jr., now he's played 10 games. 4 of those now, he's 20+ or more points. He scored in double figures in 6 of those. 2 of them are throwaways because he barely saw the court in a couple of games. But either way, Arkansas, I see improvement. But when you have the same collective collapses like you did at Bama yesterday, and it leads to a loss, now – we need to talk about the resume a little bit. Well, I want to talk about SEC tournament, NCAA tournament resume, because I think the dynamics are still very interesting because of Arkansas's strong analytics.
Yeah, absolutely. Kevin, I was telling Courtney that first half of the Georgia game might have been the best half of basketball that I've seen from the Razorbacks this season, Where do you think vibes are going into this Tennessee game on Tuesday?
I mean, if you go back and look at Arkansas's last 4 or 5 road games, or 6, they won their first 2 back to back. South Carolina, they played brilliantly against Kentucky in both halves. But you go back to the Missouri road game where Arkansas should have won. You go back to the Baylor road game. You could argue Arkansas should have won. I mean, these are all, when you talk about Baylor and Texas A&M, that was one of them that Arkansas probably should have not, had a collapse at the end of that one. But these are second half problems, Bama. So I think Arkansas goes in feeling confident because they've shown they're winning first halves in many of these games, and they're right there at the end. The problem is they just can't afford to have – you're going to have some runs that you give up, but you cannot have a colossal meltdown where there's a 15, 18-point run and swing. Even at South Carolina, Arkansas led by 10, and then in 11, they got outscored by 11 points in a small stretch and fell behind by 1. And that's not a good team. So you've got to start limiting that stuff. You've got to figure out a way to cut that out of your diet, Will. But I do think when you look at Arkansas, when we start looking at going on the road and feeling good, Arkansas can pick up a quad 1 win at Tennessee. The Kentucky game to close out the regular season at home will be a quad 1 game. Kentucky's all the way up to number 20 in net. Arkansas actually moved up a spot in net, Will, 15-14 overnight. And the Hogs they've beaten the number 15 team in net, San Diego State, the number 20 team in Kentucky. A&M's at net number 26. The Hogs split games there. Yeah, they've lost to Alabama and Baylor, who are actually ranked ahead of Arkansas in net. And also Creighton, who's a spot or 2 behind the Razorbacks. But it shows you they're 3-4 against the net top 26. Even though they're 3-7 in quad 1 games, that's pretty darn strong against the higher level teams. And Arkansas has 2 more opportunities against top 25 net teams when we're talking Tennessee and Kentucky. So they can continue to improve the resume. Arkansas was a projected 8 seed by ESPN's Joe Lunardi coming into Saturday's game against Bama. And I doubt that moves very much. If not, maybe a 9. And I think Arkansas, and I've said this before, because it beat Georgia, which would have been a quad 3 loss, that was the last opportunity for a bad loss in the regular season. So the only thing now is you don't want to lose out Bama, Tennessee, Kentucky. And then you're obviously at that point, you're in a spot where not only you're in one of those Thursday games, maybe a Wednesday game in the SEC tournament. And if you picked up a bad loss there, losing 4 in a row, depending upon what other teams are doing, you might find yourself on the wrong side of the bubble. I think there's probably an 80 to 90% chance at this point somewhere there that Arkansas is probably going to get in, but that's not 100%. If Arkansas wins one of these last 2 games, I think they're 100% a lock. And now they go into the SEC tournament with that pressure off and playing for improved seeding. But I think Arkansas at this point, if they're not mathematically out of it, they're on a razor thin margin to get a 4 seed in the SEC tournament. I think that's pretty much gone. There may be a path to that. I haven't gone and drilled down on all of it, but it's very, very razor thin. So I think fans need to expect Arkansas at best probably to be playing in Thursday game, which means they'd have to win 4 in 4 days to win the tournament. And you just hope they win one more game here in the regular season to remove any doubt that they need to do anything in that SEC tournament to qualify for an automatic bid in the NCAA tournament. And I still think what I saw in this past week, despite going 1-1 and losing that game the way they did against Alabama, I still think with Nick Smith Jr. back, this team is better. It opens things up offensively. He's been good defensively, not a liability there. In fact, I think he's done better work defensively than some of the regulars that have been in there. So we need to see all hands on deck going forward if you're a Hog fan, because if it's been crunch time, that escalates that pressure, and the value on these games escalates even more moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely, Kevin. That Kentucky game at Bud Walton is going to be a sellout crowd. I can tell you that. We're going to go to break. So much more Pig Trail Show after this.